Devin, thank you very much for taking the time for this interview. You're coordinating the MIT Inclusive Innovation Challenge. This challenge supports startups and entrepreneurial organizations and awards projects that use technology to improve economic prosperity for working people and to provide the best future solutions for the planet, work solutions for the planet. Could you give me a few insights into the history of the Innovation Challenge? What was the founding idea? How did it develop over time?
We are currently in the 4th year of the challenge, and so we have feels like a long history behind us. We actually are the largest program at the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy, and the director, Eric Brynjolfsson, and co-director, Andy McAfee, of the Initiative on the Digital Economy, or IDE as we call it, had written the book, The Second Machine Age, a number of years ago at this point. And if you're familiar with that book, it talks about all of the ways that people and businesses are going to work with, interact, and prosper in a time of rapid and profound digital transformation. And what they recognized among various trends that are happening in the digital economy, they saw that not everyone is sharing equally in the prosperity and progress that digital technology is creating. And they were really among the first to identify this trend, which now is, I think, seen very universally as something we need to combat. And so in 2015, we developed the idea for a $1 million prize focused on the future of work, saying, how can we use technology in order to reinvent work and make sure that no one is left behind economically as digital technology races ahead. And so we conceived of this vision and this idea, and then over time we have built this global tournament program where, in the last 3 years, we've awarded over $3.5 million and will award over $1 million this year.
What were the most important challenges that you experienced during this time?
I would say that the biggest challenge to building the Inclusive Innovation Challenge has really been to get the word out to the organizations, the startups, the founders that are doing this important work. So they are the inclusive innovators that are using technology to reinvent work. But when we began the program, there wasn't a strong center of gravity for those people and organizations. There was no one rallying cry or one foundation or corporation, et cetera, that was bringing all of those organizations together. And so as a result, our team had to work very hard to cast a wide net across the globe to say, who are the entrepreneurs that are out there? Which are the accelerators and incubators that are supporting them? Who are the investors that are actually driving inclusive innovation forward through the way they're allocating capital? And the way that we overcame that challenge was to evolve the model. So in the first year, we were a standalone sort of one-cycle tournament program where we recruited everyone from our own internal team. Last year, we decided to cast an even wider net by going global. And what that means is that we developed this tournament program where we work with collaborator organizations on the 5 major continents. And those organizations are corporations, they're foundations, they're accelerator programs, and they really understand their regional ecosystem and know who all the entrepreneurs are and all the entrepreneurial ecosystem players are who can support the mission. And by working with them on the ground, they focused on operations to do recruiting and to then develop the celebration events where we bring together all of the IIC, as we call the program, IIC finalists into their region. We have a big celebration event where the 12 finalist companies come together, lots of people from the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we have a day of pitches and content. And at the end of that, that's when we choose who actually gets to go on to the next phase of the tournament, which is a global grand prize gala at MIT.
What is the specific turn on this kind of inclusive innovation in, let's say, Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in the Americas? Is there a difference, or is inclusive innovation everywhere the same?
What we've seen is that in developed economies, there's been a strong growth and progress historically following industrialization. Now with digitization, there's this risk of automation. And so as we all know, jobs for many people feel like they're being threatened. there is a increasing pressure on wages. And so there's a real sense of fear and discomfort about what's to come. We are obviously focused on making people feel more optimistic and enthusiastic about the future and the way that technology is going to support that. And that's a very important portion of our mission at the IIC, is to say, here are some incredible solutions that are actually going to make your life better going forward. But on the flip side, in emerging economies where there has not been as robust economic growth, the sense that technology is coming in and is going to revolutionize lives, is going to create all these new jobs and bring in a new era of prosperity that has not been experienced before, has led to even more optimism, enthusiasm, passion in those emerging economies.
Are these solutions transferable from one region to the other?
There are definitely similar models that we've seen emerge across regions, which indicates to us that, yes, there's absolutely the ability to transfer across the different regions. Where the challenge comes in is, I would say, the cultural differences in actually implementing those solutions. So it's not so much just the practicality or the tactics of the solution itself, but rather, does that solution fit the cultural context of the new locale where they're going to open that organization? And that has to do with management style. It has to do with uptake and understanding of the technology. A lot of different factors come into play for the success of implementation, but the kernel of the idea absolutely is very transferable.
Your award is given in 4 different categories. How did these evolve over time?
The categories are intended to be sort of a holistic look at the different opportunities and challenges that we're seeing in the future of work. So we evolved that through discussion with our leadership team, with our advisors, to understand, what are they seeing as both the solutions that are already emerging, but also where are these holes and opportunities that we need to fill, and hopefully incentivize some solutions. And what we came to were 4 key topic areas. So the first is skills development and opportunity matching. So, obviously there are going to be many different skills required for these jobs of the future. Many of those are digital skills. Many of them are soft skills or harder skills, if you will, the ability to do the things that machines can't do, like have empathy, communicate, et cetera. Making sure that we're addressing the labor supply and demand mismatch is critical and can be addressed with platforms, et cetera. So that's one category. The second category is income growth and job creation. We can try and protect the jobs that we have, not let them go overseas, et cetera, or we can put all of our energy into creating those new jobs that we haven't even thought of yet. Like, if you had asked 25 years ago, like, do you want to be a social media manager? People would say, what is a social media manager? What are you talking about? So we need more of those jobs to emerge today so that people can start to prepare for them. So income growth and job creation is another. Then technology access, which seems that, at this stage we're in the digital economy, technology access shouldn't be a problem. It really still is. Even right in our backyard in Massachusetts, where MIT is, Western Massachusetts has some very low rates of broadband internet penetration. And so in those more rural areas, how can you ensure that people remain connected and can do those digital jobs if they can't even get on high-speed internet? And then lastly is financial inclusion, which I think is one of the more kind of nuanced and interesting categories we have, just because it's such interesting field for different startups to be focused on right now in the developing world in particular. So what we mean by financial inclusion is, how do we provide the financial services in order for people to develop wealth, to save, to access credit, all of those challenges that, if you are someone that's very strongly engaged already in the digital economy, you have a credit history, you may not even think of this being as an issue. But there are millions of people around the world that really don't have access to the right financial services to become more financially secure. So those 4 are our categories: skills development and opportunity matching, income growth and job creation, technology access, and financial inclusion. And if we're able to solve those challenges and find all the best possible solutions to them, we're going to see a much more robust and strong economy that works for a broader segment of the population.
What about the stage of implementation?
We ask for organizations to apply that are definitely beyond the idea phase. So, one of our key missions is to show the world that there are solutions that are out there today that are working, to try and dispel that fear that I talked about earlier of how technology is affecting us. So you have to be beyond the idea phase. And then ideally, our sweet spot is to support organizations that could really benefit from winning the IIC. So that means, they're not already a household name or household brand. They are very much in the early scaling phase. So early to growth phase is what we seek out with our IIC winners. But what also drives the winners are the metrics that we ask our judges to use as they assess the companies. And that does end up leading to companies that are a little bit more mature in the grand scheme of things. Because one of the key metrics is impact and ability to show that they've already had impact. So we ask for quantifiable metrics and measurements that show we've helped X number of people, or we've increased wages by X%. And we really want to be able to say this is a solution that's working today. And that thus leads to somewhat more mature organizations. But it can also tip the scale if they have a very impressive and inspirational vision, because that's another one of our metrics. How scalable the model itself is, and scalability is another key that we look at. Of course, impact. And then lastly is participation, which what we mean by that is how well are you engaging sort of underrepresented people and supporting underrepresented people with your solution, whether that's a minority, whether that's based on gender, whether that's based on geography, or purely people that have not been able to sustain quality of life based on the low wages that they earn.
How far do you care about potential negative impacts as well?
We absolutely care about negative impacts. I think the challenge for us, as it is for most organizations and people, is to anticipate an organization that has positive intent. Will their approach have any negative impact in the market they're operating in? Because there's certainly system dynamics that are going to come into place and have unintended consequences. But we do try to anticipate what those could be, and then either help those organizations to minimize and mitigate those potential impacts, or say, it's too risky to give you an award in the IIC.
What is the driving force for these innovations?
The passion of the founders, which sounds somewhat trite, but I have met all of them, and I can say it's true that to a person, everyone is so passionate to create impact using the technology that they are deploying. So at the very core of these companies, it's the people that are driving the businesses forward, and they're very mission oriented. That said, you can't survive on mission alone, and definitely you need to be able to have a real business case for the work that you're doing. And so I would say that many of the organizations see such demand from the market that they're able to sustain their businesses very successfully, particularly those that are specifically addressing the needs of a broad population that has been underserved. That being said, one of the challenges that many of our organizations that win say they're experiencing that is hampering their growth is customer acquisition.
What do they need most for scaling up?
Across the board, they say funding. Last year, for example, we had this workshop the day after the Grand Prize Gala. And in preparation, we said, okay, we want to assemble a team of mentors for you. What are the primary challenges that you're facing so that we can bring in the right mentors? And almost everyone said securing funding was the biggest challenge. So I don't think that that's all that different from an entrepreneur in any other context or any other industry. Finding that funding is always going to be a challenge. But it's particularly challenging for our Inclusive Innovation Challenge winners. The reason being that I think there's still a stigma is the wrong word, but a positive stigma that they're mission oriented and therefore they don't have as strong a business case and therefore maybe can't get investment. But that being said, since we started the IIC 4 years ago, we've definitely seen that trend start to evolve. So investors are looking more closely at these IIC winners and companies like them, saying that even if the returns are potentially smaller than with the next photo sharing app, they have long-term potential social benefits that are going to have major benefits on the economy at large. And some of them are willing to take a smaller return because it has impact. And so, impact investing has been a space that's been around for a long time, but it's become increasingly mainstream, increasingly accepted, increasingly valuable in the last 4 years. But, the broader question, which many entrepreneurs grapple with, is simply like, how do you balance the fundraising process with the being operational and just running your business? And so we hear that again and again from our ISC winners, is how do they find that balance? And part of the value of the ISC and the network that's created is that they can connect with one another and learn best practices from each other and support one another and make introductions, for that matter, to help facilitate that securing of capital.
Do you offer any kind of support for them after they attended the challenge? Is there any kind of permanent networking that you offer? Is there any kind of implementation support?
So what we do at MIT so this year it'll be on November 21st and 22nd that they come to join us. We have a full day event focused on the future of work. And there's an opportunity to do a lot of networking there. And then the following day, we do a capacity building workshop where we engage the MIT ecosystem and bring them together to specifically support the IIC finalists and winners. And so there is a network that gets created in that instance and in that workshop that they can then leverage going forward. And then we remain in touch with all of the winners and engage with them as we can to put them in touch with the right people at MIT to support them.
The Inclusive Innovation Challenge understands inclusion in a way that the innovation is supporting people, is helping people, is supporting them in the future of their work. Inclusion could also be understood as a kind of participatory element to involve them in developing a solution. How far are your award winners also following in a participatory approach? Or is this simply a solution put on the table and said, for the benefit of people, but we designed it?
When we conceived of the Inclusive Innovation Challenge, what we meant by inclusion was economic inclusion. So are these solutions that are ensuring that no one's being left behind, and people that are underrepresented can thrive in the digital economy? But over time, we realized just how nuanced and complex the question of inclusion is. We actually see a lot of solutions coming through that are technology to address disabilities and that kind of inclusion. There's a lot of different things to look at. And diversity is, of course, one that we're very focused on. Inherently, if we're looking at economic inclusion, typically the people that are not from the majority are those that are being excluded. So diversity is something that automatically comes into play in those people that are being addressed. On the flip side of the solution development, that's where we would like to see even more inclusion happening. We don't make that as a real stipulation for winning, but simply because the people that have lived the experiences and the challenges that they're trying to address, they tend to be the ones that come in as founders and are part of the organization. So what we've been happy to see is that inclusion and participation in the development of the innovation happens almost naturally.
What would you recommend to other organizations that would like to launch similar challenges in different areas?
Launching challenges, research shows, can be a very strong catalyst for innovation ecosystems. So we strongly support more people getting involved in this game. And some of the most important advice, I suppose, that I could share is making sure to have the support behind you that is required to actually maintain the prize and make it sustainable financially. Another piece is never lose sight of how important the network and the community that you build is, because that network is what allows you to grow, to scale, and to support the winners. And so we've tried to develop a strong cohort of judges that is very passionate, very engaged with the IIC. And they've remained with us, really, some of them from the very first year. And so they really care a lot about the work that we're doing, as well as the actual winners. So leaning on those people to say, we're all in this together, and really supporting them and making sure that they're having a positive experience is going to lead dividends for the overall value of the program.
Thank you very much for this talk. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.